Hello again, and thank you for taking the time to watch my review of the SD Gundam Calibarn Cross Silhouette. This mobile suit is from the Witch from Mercury anime series, which is a personal favourite, and it's available on Crunchyroll. It's highly recommended. It's piloted by Mercury. Here is a quick overview of the box and the art on each side. I really love the design of this model. It's a fantastic design for a mobile suit, especially one that has so much white space. I picked mine up from Forbidden Planet for 20 quid. But it might be a tad cheaper on other sites. Overall good value. So let's take a look at what comes in the box. Those who've watched my previous videos will see a sharp increase in part count. Inside you'll see 8 separate sprues alongside what appears to be a ton of stickers. This model kit is super customizable though, and it can be built either as a stock SD kit or the Cross Silhouette CS type kit. These have longer limbs and make the kit almost high grade in size. Obviously I'm going for the cooler and bigger CS build. So there's quite a few talking points throughout this video, but we'll kick off with just unwrapping and setup. You might notice a wooden dish strainer to the side there. You can buy dedicated sprue holders from hobby shops, although a £2 dish strainer works just as well, especially when you make much bigger kits that have 40 plus sprues. All of a sudden 4 of these make identifying and organising your sprues so much easier. So here I've got a pot of Tamiya panel line ink, and you apply this to the grooves in a kit, similar to a wash on a GW kit. It comes with a little brush and a lid so you can be more accurate when you're applying it. And I'll do a quick close-up so you can see how it works. It uses capillary action to fill the panel line rather than going over the entire line itself. And once it's dried, you just tidy up the overspill and jobs are good. You do have to be careful as it can eat through plastic, so always make sure to wipe up any excess and apply before assembly. If it gets behind the parts, you might not notice any pulls and it will just destroy your kits. It really does make a huge difference however, and I do recommend taking your time to panel line any kits. Here you can see I've been using a cotton bud to clean up any spills once the ink is dried within the panel lines. It just tidies it all up and gets rid of any marks besides within the panel lines. Carrying on with the assembly, you'll notice I'm building one of the legs. I think just this leg may have more parts than my previous review Gunpla, and even though it's a tad on the thick side, I'm digging this kit already. There's a ton of detail here and fantastic colour separation for an SD kit. Moving on to the assembly of the second leg, I'll just point out that sticker sheet at the top right. So there's duplicates of each sticker depending on which permet score you want, and the permet score in the series is kind of like a power level, and the colour changes when that jumps. So think of it like Goku's hair and how that changes when he levels up. There's a red set of stickers which is the default look, and there's a rainbow-esque set which is a maxed out look, and those are the ones I'm using in this build. Any eagle-eyed viewers might notice I assemble the knee part backwards. My silly monkey brain can't multitask, so I edit out or I take it apart and fix it. So I'm now going to move on to building the waist part. It's a pretty simple step of the build, it's only got a couple of parts. It does look pretty good though, and most importantly, it looks like they'll allow plenty of movement for the legs. As I've said, it's a pretty simple build for this section, although there is a tiny little clear part which you need to put a sticker on. When you assemble it, you snap it onto the front of the crotch, but this little sucker did not want to stay in. It was a bit of a ball ache, to be honest. So I'm now making a start on one of the arms, which I think requires a piece from every sprue. This is another comparison I'd like to make with Games Workshop stuff like Warhammer. As much as I love GW stuff, their sprue layouts are a nightmare. Parts are rarely next to each other, and they don't label sprues as well as Bandai. Gunpla on the other hand have really clear lettering on each sprue, and parts are placed sequentially so they're easy to find. It's much nicer than playing Where's Wally looking for parts like you get with GW builds. So here I'm bringing out my secret weapon for panel lining, a rubber eraser. There are a lot of ways of cleaning your panel lines. Earlier I used a plain cotton bud, but you can also use a pen with thinners in it, or apply the thinners to a cotton bud and use that. Or you can just use good old fashioned friction and remove the ink with a rubber or your thumb. I first saw Mecha Gaikotsu, who's a Gunpla YouTuber, do this, and it just works well. This isn't awful rubber though, but it still does the job alright. Anything it misses I can use a cotton bud or my thumb, and I just feel more secure using this over thinners as I'm clumsy and I always wipe away my panel lines. So I'm just tidying up the mess I've made on this first arm piece from the ink. You might spot the two hand pieces for each arm. One is an open, expressive hand, and the other is a fist type hand that can hold the weapon or shield. But I'm just popping it all together, which is nice and easy. This is a super simple build, so a great choice for a first timer to the hobby. Here I'm going to finish the second arm. It's always a lovely part of a build as you've already made one, so you can usually just cut all the parts out and build it from recent memory. Obviously there's an element where some parts are mirrored, but it's super satisfying making second limbs. Similar to the first arm, this also contains both hand types. Now the hands don't have posable fingers, but to be honest that's the standard for SD kits, although the master grade SD kits do have posable hands. I mention that as I do have the MGSD Freedom Gundam to build, which is a huge jump even from this kit in complexity and detail. I'm now assembling the torso chest piece. This is usually my favourite part of any build. You get some interesting mechanics in chest builds, with some kits having small core fighters, kind of like little spaceships. Thankfully this kit doesn't have too much complexity or transformation gimmicks, as those can be a real nightmare. I'm looking at you, real grade Zeta Gundam. That kit's a grenade, and it's just infamous for being an awkward build with difficult parts to put together. Moving back to the chest piece and getting on some panel lining. The chest has a lot of really lovely detail that these panel lines will reveal. And after a bit of clean up using my rubber and fun methods that I've mentioned before, it's looking great. You'll notice I cut off each part for each section rather than a piece at a time, and some people might balk at that, but I find it easier than one at a time and it's a lot quicker. There is a nice sticker here for the chest piece, although I'm not sure it will show up very well with my camera and light setup. So I'm going to finish off that build for the chest as well as the jetpack. I quite like the jetpack, it has posable thrusters and some decent colour separation, and it's nice to see that colour plastic rather than stickers like a typical SD kit. I'm now assembling all the parts I've made so far, and it's kind of odd that the instructions suggest this now before you've made the head, but I'm a stickler for the rules. Everything goes together really clean. It's just ball joints for each limb and the chest and waist pieces, but there's no problems assembling this at all. Admittedly it is an SD kit, so it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of the larger, more expensive grades, but it's nice to see it come together so cleanly, especially after making the Exa and Gunpla just before this. Those are much cheaper and simpler kits, to be honest, so you'd expect them to be a bit more rickety, but this goes together almost as well as a high grade in my opinion. Speaking of grades, some of the feedback I've got off of some of you should like to see the difference between those, and I am lucky enough, or wasteful enough if you ask my wife, to have quite a few model kits across the grades, so I'll do one of those videos soon. So, back to the build. I'm now working on a head, and the heads on these SD kits are usually much larger than normal, but this isn't as exaggerated as that Gunpla model, which is basically all head. There is a sticker for some cartoony eyes, but you can also use a clear plastic on the flip side of that piece, and it's another example of how you can customise this kit quite easily. Whilst panel lining the parts, you'll notice that I spot a part that I missed on the model, and I did say before not to really use panel liner ink on a finished model, but the applicator had almost run out, so it was worth the risk. There's quite a few sticker parts on the head, but nothing to mask colour separation really. But I'm just going to put the parts together now. It just clips in perfectly, and another strong point for Bandai's kits is how easily they snap together without any glue. Don't want to carry on with the Games Workshop comparisons, but their push fit kits are horrific. They often have big gaps between parts and need some tidying to fit properly, so I just snip the pegs off and just glue them. That's not to say I'm a GW hater. I love their kits overall, especially the Age of Sigmar model designs. It's just a real plus point for Bandai, especially if you've not built a Gunpla before. And when you get to Master or Perfect grade kits, the engineering really starts to show off. For instance, they print hand parts where all the joints for the fingers etc. are made on the sprue. I'm not sure how they do that, but I'm suspecting it's some kind of witchcraft. But their parts just fit together perfectly. The accuracy of the machinery is perfect, barring the odd old kit. So, putting aside the dunking on GW and getting back to the build, I love the V-fin on this model. The coloured stickers behind it look great, but again, they won't show under this lighting. Hopefully they stand out more in the final close-ups. So just another little sticker for the head camera. It's time to put the head on, and it's looking really great. All that's left now are just the weapons and shields. So just pop that head on, do a little bit of posing just to check the model out and see how it's come out. And it's lovely when you get to that point where you can see all your progress coming together. It's really satisfying. You get to check how it can pose, check the movements and how adjustable the model is, and just have a little look at it, check it out. So we're on to the final section now, which as mentioned is the weapon and the shield. At this point I just tend to cut everything off the sprue that's remaining. That means all the parts I've left are the ones that I need, and anything that's spare can go into my bits box. I use these parts on any custom jobs or kit bashes, especially with my GW models. I've got lots of kit bash bits for my Orc models. There is only a couple of spare bits with this kit though, so I'm just going to panel line everything at the same time here. Rather than focusing on the weapon first, I'll do the shield parts as well. And again, just saves me time, helps me be more efficient with my build. This way I can panel line them all and clean them all at the same time. Again, you'll see me clean up any excess ink. If anything can pull anywhere, then it will just rot the plastic, so be careful. There's only one sticker for the weapon and shield. I would have expected more than that from a high grade, so seeing that on an SD kit is just wild. Here, I'm going to assemble the thruster parts for the broomstick. The proper name for this is the variable rod rifle, which is pretty cool I suppose, but this is definitely a broomstick railgun love child, and it's incredibly fitting for the Witch from Mercury theme. To be honest, it's probably the most iconic thing from the Calibarn aesthetic. A really simple build for the broomstick, to be honest. As you can see here, there's just two parts that make up the body of the rifle itself, and then you have the bristles of the broom. This gun is fantastic. It's like a more traditional witch's broom. It's also used as transport for Calibarn. Those bristles, as mentioned, are thruster parts, and the mecha can use it like an additional booster to fly around on. So just final steps of assembly, pop it all together. It's pretty straightforward. It's a real simple build. There's not many parts in this, but probably more in one of the legs, which is rare for a weapon of this size. So I'm going to move on to the shield now, and you might spot that this is made up of multiple smaller components rather than a large shield part. This is all part of the lore, and the Calibarn shield is made up of smaller parts which are known as gun bits. Think of them like drones that serve multiple purposes. So they can form into a shield, which is how I'll be displaying them. They can also attach onto the kit itself to provide additional armour, and they can fly around remotely in the anime from the Calibarn, acting like Gradius's options as another form of attack. They just orbit around the model and just fire at its enemies. Again, it's quite nice to see only the one sticker on the shield. It's one of the areas that's usually quite bad with SD kits. They just have so many stickers, and the shields are a real indicator of how many stickers they can chuck on there. Sometimes they seem to be almost entirely made up of stickers, but to be honest, you're probably sick of hearing me go on about stickers. If anyone is playing a drinking game whenever I say sticker, then I'm sorry. I hold myself completely not responsible for anything as ridiculous as that. But the shield looks great, really detailed. I love the colour separation, and again, all clips together really simply with a little peg to fit into the hand. Onto the final assembly now, and I've switched around the expressive hands for some holding hands. That way I can put the broomstick rifle in the right hand and the left hand can hold the shield. Just a bit of posing so I can figure out how I want this model to be finally set up. So here's the finished kit. Apologies for the turntable, but it's one I use for painting, so it's a bit messy. But I think the kit is enough of a looker that you won't notice too much, hopefully. I'm glad you can see the stickers behind those clear plastic parts. I'm going to move on to a different pose where you've got the Calibarn holding the broomstick with both hands. It did take a bit of finagling to get the kit holding it properly, but I think it looks great. And here we're going to see it side by side with a high grade Calibarn, and it stands up really well next to it. Even though the high grade is larger with more detail, I really like the SD kit, and they're going to look great together in my display case. Before I get to the final score, I'd like you to like, comment, subscribe and hit that post notification bell. As for you, Dan, probably the last time I say that, but overall a phenomenal model kit, highly recommended, solid 8 out of 10. So thanks again for taking the time to watch this, and see you in the next one.